Good morning. I'm Franklin Marshall with African Trade Network, and I'm here with Hikalut, Elizabeth, and Rodney, here to talk about African investment and African trade. Good morning.
Morning.
How are you, Elizabeth?
Good morning.
Fine, thank you. Fine.
Good morning, Rodney.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Marshall. How are you?
It's a beautiful day.
Yes, it is. East Coast to the West Coast, I guess.
My day's just ending.
Oh,
Yeah, that's right.
in Zambia, right?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
good.
Yeah.
Well, we wanted to talk about some exciting things today. We were talking about a little bit about what happened with the president of Ukraine coming to Washington, D.C., and we got into talking about also Abraham Traore in Burkina Faso and the magnificent things that he's doing there on the continent. He's growing these massive farms and selling his product outside of his country. He just ordered 1,000 tractors. Early on last year, he ordered 500 tractors. Just last week, he ordered 1,000 more tractors. They just opened a large fishery. They started a hospital, university hospital, and now they're getting ready to open 55 more hospitals throughout the country of Burkina Faso. Really wild, incredible. And he's the envy of all the other African countries on the continent right now. I think when the youth came unglued in Kenya early on, a couple of months ago, they were envious and also proud of Burkina Faso and Abraham Traore. But a lot of people don't understand and realize how he got to where he got. So, but some do, because there was waving of Russia flag in Kenya at that time. Elizabeth, you're on the continent, so I thought that you could expound on that. And then later on, we're going to see how we can bring that all together and how we can take advantage of that as individuals and groups in doing trade on the continent of Africa.
I think it's also very important to take note of the generation of the leaders that are really spearheading development within their own countries. If you look at, you were just speaking about Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso. He's 36 years old. He's a young buck. And then the other leaders in the other African countries is Mohamed Deby of Chad, Colonel Assimi Gauta of Mali, Mahmadi Daoubai of Guinea, and excuse me if I don't pronounce these names properly, Bassirou Diomaye Faye of Senegal, Andry Rajolina of Madagascar, he's 49, and Abiy Ahmed of Ethiopia, he's 47. So you've got age ranges of 36, 39, 41, 44, 44, and 49, and 47. That's the generation right there. That came after Generation X, which is me and Rodney. Rodney and I come from Generation X. Generation Xers were kind of, yes, as well as you, Franklin. Generation X, we were kind of, when we first started around that, in fact, in our 20s, we're kind of like, oh, I'll find out when I get there. We're kind of wandering around a bit until we actually understood what we really wanted to do and achieve. And when we finally got it, we didn't want to let go of it. That's the Generation X. So we're kind of like holding on to something that we believe in, and we're not letting go, and we're actually doing it within the system. Now, these young leaders, if you've noticed, a lot of them come from the Francophone countries. They do not want to be colonized anymore. They have just decided enough is enough. They've seen their parents and their grandparents being overshadowed and overlooked for the hard labor that they have tried to achieve within their own countries, yet all their revenue goes to France. And the other thing that you need to notice about them is that they all come from militant backgrounds or even very strict, orderly backgrounds of being raised, and very determined to achieve what they want to achieve. And they're very, very focused. I personally think it's the upbringing. of their parents, and I give them a hand up to them. And they have built them into very, very strong leaders to be focused and be very proud of being African. And because of that, you've got this new generation that's coming up of not only the 40-somethings, but also the 30-somethings and the 20-somethings. In Kenya, not too long ago, sometime last year, towards the end of the year last year, you had, in fact, it was during the summer last year in Kenya, you had the youth revolt against the system. They just went out and they wanted their president to go. They were sick and tired of politics being played as this politics, and nothing was being achieved on the ground that was tangible. They got sick and tired of it. So you have this uprising of young leaders who are rushing to achieve what they want to achieve. So you have people like in my generation, Generation X and Generation Y, who are now using their knowledge and wisdom and their confidence as Africans to go out there and just attain what is rightfully theirs and put in systems that are actually working to build Africa as a very, very strong continent as a whole. So you have the trading system that has been put there through the AFCFTA, which is the Africa Free Trade Agreement, which has been signed by many African countries. And that is a vehicle to promote trade across the continent, and not necessarily looking at trading with the West or even just Europe itself. They will only trade with those who are just very serious about building each other. And nobody's planning to sell themselves short anymore. So when you have these strong young African leaders, they are going to achieve more than our previous leaders have achieved within a very short period of time. And once they achieve that, my personal worry is when you have militant leaders, they have a tendency to become dictators. That is my only fear. Right now, it is important that they do what they need to do to achieve their ultimate goal of becoming independent. That's their role as leaders. Already, the Francophone countries have got one passport. One passport, while a lot of the African leaders in the African Union have been talking about this how many years now? And here comes this young buck, 36 years old, right there and then manages to do it. And soon enough, they're going to have one currency. I am confident that that's going to be the next step. And I can just foresee it, that they're probably going to go for one currency. Yeah. Now, if the continent of Africa, the rest of us have delayed having the one passport as well as the one currency, that has to do with having a fear of being run by one dictator. Gaddafi tried it many, many years ago, about 15 years ago. He tried that. It didn't work. It didn't gel very well with other African countries. Why? Because everybody wants to be a leader. There's a struggle to run and rule people. And you're not going to see it within this short period of time where the whole continent is going to result to have a one currency and one government and one system to work with. Right now, they're gingerly just working towards trading within our own currency. People are comfortable with that for now. It seems to be working through the systems that they've set up through the banking systems. And regionally, they've created free trading across their own borders and reducing the taxes within each of their borders, and also giving them the opportunity to travel across each other's borders without having to have a visa. Slowly but surely, a lot of the African countries are going to result into having visa-free opportunities. They're gingerly working towards that. Why is that? Because that's where they get their currency from. They got to bank in some money somehow.
Rodney, we were talking about what just happened in Washington, D.C. with President Trump and Lewinsky. Lewinsky? Is that how you say his name?
Lewinsky, yes, yes, I think so.
And we're going to try to explore what Elizabeth just talked about in regards to what is happening with the BRICS and how the BRICS are opening doors for people like Abraham Traore, and how Russia and China have been at the forefront of this, along with the other countries like South Africa, Brazil, and India. And the goal of, in my assessment, is that this war is all about breaking up this alliance and cutting in the middle of this to stop the hegemony of the West. What do you see on that?
Basically, the BRICS, Russia, China, are giving better deals than the IMF. After these other countries want to separate themselves from the IMF, because when they come in, they get a deal from the IMF, they get money from them. They're pretty much, IMF is trying to come over and take over the country, like we were discussing earlier. They're taxing them. They're taxing them 3 and 4 times off the money that these other African countries and other places are borrowing from them. So, and just like Elizabeth said, these young, intelligent, very educated, military background see like what their parents and grandparents went through dealing with the IMF, the West, the things that has pretty much kept them in oppression. So yeah, so this whole system, we were talking earlier, this whole system been in place for a long time, hundreds and hundreds of years. And on the spiritual side of it, their day it's pretty much over. So what is going on is, I know they've been speaking about this for a long time, the transfer of wealth is begun. So that's basically what's going on. And with the Ukraine, we all know that the president, Zelensky, he was pretty much put in place in Ukraine. A lot of things that would, a lot of just his personal his personal life. I said this guy lives a rock star type lifestyle, So he's taking the United States is giving this guy $500 million for this war, and they're saying that it can't even, a lot of the money is not accounted for. So that's the thing with Trump and him. It's like you said, they're trying to break the whole BRICS thing up, but I don't think they're going to succeed, honestly. Honestly, I don't think they're going to succeed with Trump in office. In order for them to succeed, the United States is going to have to get involved, not just financially, but going to have troops on the ground, And like Trump said, that would be the beginning of a World War III. So it's a scary time. But also it's a liberating time as well, because we already know as U.S. citizens, we're taxed on everything that we do. And a lot of the money go to those European countries. Our tax dollars have built the European countries, after World War II. So it's just that time. Prophecy is speaking right now, this. Like I say, this system has been in power for a very, very long time. A lot of us don't have the information. A lot of us don't know what's going on. But people like yourself and Elizabeth, who we've researched it, we studied it, we understand what's happening now. And just a sit back and wait see what's going to happen going forward. That's my take on it.
It's pretty interesting what's going on. As you said, a lot of people don't know, they don't realize what's happening. They consider diving into this is getting into negative territory when they look at all of the things that are going on in the world. And when they start understanding what's taking place in the world, they look at it as a negative thing that, that they're ingesting, as opposed to understanding this is your roadmap to navigate. And I think if more people could understand the bigger picture, it would bring them a lot more comfort. I know I have talked to people before, and they just can't fathom. They can't stand to allow themselves to think about too many things that get them depressed. But the only way you're going to understand how to, as I said, navigate the system, get your second passport, understand, about trade, understand where you can go and do business. If you want to move to another country, position yourself to be able to do that, to go and do trade in those countries. What kind of business can you start? But a lot of people are afraid to even consider that, especially people that are well established. They could never see themselves outside of a particular system. But I know that the BRICS, it's a real shakeup to the world, and Africa has a window of opportunity to run through and to do, as you said, Elizabeth, a variety of networks. I mean, the BRICS has come in at a perfect time to go along with the African Free Trade Agreement. They would, I'm sure, work hard to break African Free Trade Agreement up if it wasn't for the BRICS. They're like parallel at this point. So it's a perfect timing for the BRICS and African Free Trade Agreement to come together. And I see that what Abraham Traore, I feel like he's being funded by Russia to make him a poster child, an example for the continent. So if he's an example to the continent and he stimulates something in everybody else to make them jealous, make them fight like they fought in Kenya, it's like, hey, we want that. Abraham Traore, what he's doing is he's making it available. Guys are getting jobs, doing construction. Young guys have farms. They're becoming millionaires in Burkina Faso. They took their minds back. Kuwait just went there this week and lent Burkina Faso $500 million, $600 million. And Traore is getting things from all over the world. He's gotten deals with Iran, with North Korea, Turkey. The fluidity that he has at this point to make partnerships with people all over the world. A lot of the other leaders in Africa, they're a little reluctant to doing that. So what he's doing is bring in light. This is, I think, what Russia is doing. This is their strategic play in weaponry of using the continent of Africa to weaken Europe. Because if he was able to strengthen Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, and cause all the other Francophone countries to abandon their relationship with France, France was getting several $1 million a day just with their flights. So with their flights going in to Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, they've lost, I think, close to $10-20 billion within a year because they don't have their airplanes going in doing those flights right now. Burkina Faso just bought their airplane, their passenger airplane. They're building up a fleet of airplanes now. So they're moving like lightning. So they're cutting France out of that. France is begging them to get back in to do those flights. They took over the gold mine. Niger took over their uranium. And the French were taking the uranium, selling it for $200 per kilogram and giving the people in Niger 80 cents per kilogram. What a deal, huh?
You're saying that. Yeah, it's interesting you're saying that. The other strategy that Russia is doing is bartering. They're bartering. And that's how African countries are managing to clear their debt with Russia. So he said, okay, if you don't have the money to pay me, then give us oil or give us grain or give us whatever to pay off your debt. He's done that with several countries, and it's working for him. And that's where the bartering system is now coming back on the continent of Africa. If you look at it historically, it's like history repeating itself. The African market, before colonialists came during the 16 and 1500s, we were already bartering. That's how we did business. We were just bartering and traveling across the continent. And we were just bartering. We didn't use currencies at all. We did not use currencies at all. We were just bartering. And Ethiopia was in the lead of it. And it was the wealthiest nation on the continent. It was the wealthiest. In fact, Ethiopia was so large that it actually spread out into Europe as well. Okay, let's look in the book of the Bible. Yeah. Queen Esther, her king, was the wealthiest king because he owned such a huge portion of land that he was overseeing that stretched out all the way into Europe as well. That's how big the economic wealth was for the continent of Africa. And it also took part of the Middle East as well. So Africa was never ever poor. We always looked at our minerals and our gemstones as something that we never really tampered with because it was a very spiritual thing for Africans to tamper with anything that came from the earth, and we respected that. So we never really used minerals and gemstones as a symbolism of wealth until the Arabs and the Europeans came and wanted to use those things for their own wealth because their currency was in gold. It was in gold, silver, platinum. That was their currency. So they needed as much gold as possible. And that's when the gold trading started. Then all the other minerals started. Then colonialism came in because they saw that the continent of Africa actually had an abundant amount of minerals and gemstones, which they needed for their currency. So that's when they created a currency and made it predominant of what we considered wealth, which was grain. Grain was wealth. Coming back to the Bible again, what happened in Egypt with Joseph? He had to sell the grain. And that's how Egypt became very wealthy, because of grain. That was our currency, and it was bartered. You would barter everything. And what had happened is that along the way, obviously, slave trade, developed because people ran out of grain. So they started selling themselves and saying, I'll come and work for you for X number of years to pay off the grain that I cannot afford to buy from you. That's when slavery started. So slavery eventually became a commodity, part of trade. So the whole trading and bartering is an old, ancient style of doing business. And we're now going back to that. Now, Russia has understood that this is the language that Africans understand. So he's made it so much easier to clear their debt. And it's something that comes naturally for us. And it's something that which will be very familiar with us. Soon enough, everybody will be bartering.
But it's also fair.
Yes.
Because if you're getting uranium, which is worth $200 per kilogram, and you're only giving the Africans 80 cents per kilogram, and you're selling it for $200 per kilogram, how much money are you making? How much profit are you making? And you're leaving the other guy in poverty.
That's modern day colonialism.
With your gun to their heads. So what Russia's doing is in relations to what they're doing with the BRICS. The BRICS are all for exchange, using your own currency. And when Rodney and we were talking about America and the international, the IMF or the International Monetary Fund funding America, but it's owned by the British, and we have to pay interest on that money that is borrowed. And not too many people are daring enough to try taking us off of that system. And that's what Donald Trump is trying to do right now. And that USAID was one of the tools that was used. It was almost like covert ways of doing a variety of things worldwide.
Yes.
And that was one of the first things that they cut. And the aid coming to Africa, he cut that, and South Africa was saying, hey, that money goes to supporting people that have AIDS. And some countries are saying, hey, we're glad you cut that money because we can now function without those restrictions. And it frees us up. And that's what happened with Museveni when he disagreed to allow LGBT and gay rights to propagate over the country of Uganda. They cut his aid off, and he said, we don't need that aid anyway. We have everything that we need.
Yeah, it's interesting you're talking about the USAID funding. especially with HIV and AIDS. Yes, they cut off USAID. Well, they basically pulled out USAID out of Africa, except for some projects that are having to do with health attached to HIV and AIDS. They're rethinking the they're rethinking how to still be assisting people, because they finally realize, oh, if we cut it off completely, people are just going to die because they won't receive the ARVs. So as we speak now, some USAID funded projects that have to do with HIV and AIDS and release of ARVs, they're still there. They're still there until the final decision has been made for them to completely pull out. So we don't know what's happening. So I was talking to my cousin because she works for a project where they distribute ARVs to those who are HIV positive. And she just said, yeah, they told us that in order for them to evaluate each project, we just have to continue coming to work and until they have a final decision, because they're still making an assessment on whether certain projects are worth keeping and whether they're not worth keeping. And so they're doing a massive audit, a huge audit. I'll give an example. Malawi has got the largest NGOs on the continent of Africa. So if you can imagine, USAID pulls out, the majority of them probably had funding from USAID. So in a way that actually gave Malawi a chance to breathe and say, now I can make decisions on my own. I'm not tied to a debt. As a backlash, well, not a backlash, but as a way of regaining their confidence as Malawi, they have actually put a hold on minerals and gemstones being exported out of the country because they want to strategize. They know, and they've always known, that the largest mines are not owned by their own people. They're owned by Americans. They've been raping the country.
The continent.
So now, yes. So now it's like, okay, fine. Take your aid. I'm going to block your minerals.
I'd like to bring something up, Elizabeth, if we could focus on that for Burkina Faso and Mali, Niger. Now, this was the Mali Kingdom, right?
Right.
Area, but it
Yes.
probably stretched much further.
Yes.
And so we think about Mansa Musa,
Yes.
who was the world's richest person ever
Yes.
to live.
Yes.
And he went across the continent with gold, giving out gold that swamped and suppressed the entire world's economy. So
Yes.
when I think about Abraham Traore, Simi Gorta, and Chiani, Captain Chiani, I think about those guys with their memories of Manya Musa. And I wonder if this has to be divine
Yes.
of what's happening with them.
That's why I
Because
said, history repeats itself. We're
it's
aligning ourselves. Yes.
it's just
We're
amazing.
aligning ourselves. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Democracy doesn't work. Why can't people realize that democracy doesn't work? You can't make a man a god. You cannot. The system will eventually either crumble or hit a roadblock. They won't know what to do. They'll have to really turn to a higher power. And that's why I was saying it's great that you have these Francophone countries coming together, but the majority of them are coming with a like-mindedness of a militant mindset, which is very dangerous.
Because they're tired.
Yes, yeah. And it's good for now. We're celebrating and we're enjoying it. But do they see the train smashing later on down the line? For themselves, that is. Not the country, but for themselves. You can get excited that you want to achieve a lot within a short period of time. And we'll definitely remember you for achieving what you have achieved within a short period of time. But will you hold back with your militant rule?
But one of the things to look at is these guys, they don't know any other way to go about this because they've been oppressed for the way. Yeah. Abraham Traore goes in with his pistol everywhere he goes. Even if he's going to see any president, he still has his pistol and his.
Scary. It's
Yeah.
intimidating.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably good with that too. He can pull it really quick.
Right. And he's young and he's got the reflexes of a young buck. So I wouldn't dare try to use
Oh.
my reflexes against a 30-something-year-old.
So, Rodney and Elizabeth, how do we pull this all together and look at people being able to take advantage of the investments on the continent of Africa?
Well, the way I look at it is take advantage right now before things get too expensive. Because if you don't jump on the bandwagon now, it's going to be too expensive for you to even want to come on board. Right now is the right time where prices are lower, where our currencies are actually lower than what they were even 5 years ago, especially the Zambian kwacha. The Zambian kwacha has lost value within a short period of time with our leader. So he designed it that way, to encourage investment, to make it easier for international people to come in. But unfortunately, what's happened is that it's backfired. It's eaten into the businesses that local people are running. So anyway, that's politics. But right now, we're looking at the window opportunity to come into Africa. Our current currencies are cheaper than the dollar. For every dollar, you could probably get 5 of our currency or 20 of our currency. So the best time to come in is now, before it gets too expensive. I was having a chat with Peter, our friend, and we were talking about Madagascar because my son is there. He's working there, and we were discussing how that's the financial world of Africa, because you have a lot of financial institutions where they have offices there, and they also look at tax rebates. And we were both kind of like brainstorming how can we get into Mauritius now while it's cheaper, and we just thought about it. If we don't get in right now into Mauritius, we won't be able to get in 5 years down the line because it will be too expensive, too expensive. And Mauritius is really selling their country not only as a retirement place. You can get a visa now to go to Mauritius and just retire and not work. They're looking more at real estate. They're pushing the real estate market and registering companies in Mauritius. Yeah. So you got to look at all the pros and cons of every different African country has got something specific about it. If it suits your niche, get in there now, right now. If your niche is to get into gold, and you understand the gold market very well, get into a JV with Congolese people. Yes, it's dangerous, but get the key people who you want to work with in Congo. They have the best gold. If you're looking at getting diesel or oil or gas, Mozambique, get in now.
Absolutely.
That's why you see a lot of disruptions in these countries, because they're trying to divert the attention from the wealth that the countries actually have. But those of us who are on the continent, we understand what each country has and the wealth that it has. So we got to use our trading networks to get in. So if you're really looking at investing your money wisely, get into something that you're already doing and understand the market for it, and just worry about building your cultural understanding of that country before you go in there and invest.
Any last words for you, Rodney?
I agree with Elizabeth, but we here in the U.S., I say, if you want to invest in Africa, get with Hikalu or get with Elizabeth and allow her to navigate, because she knows the continent well. She has the resources, not resources, but the connections. She has all those resources that she was speaking of, and get with somebody from Africa who understand the cultural differences, and allow them to navigate you through the different industries, and don't be afraid to invest. because this is the time. This is the time to invest. Africa is rich with a lot of natural resources, and we have to, like you said earlier, I mean, we got to move away from the old system. This is a new time. This is a new day, and this is just the opportunity is there. So, like I say, you want to invest in Africa. You want to have someone navigate you through the different industries that really is connected to the continent.
Elizabeth, how can we get in touch with you?
Once again, you can easily get in touch with us by sending us an email or even through our social media sites, Hit Galut Consultants Limited. You just Google us. Our contact details will pop up. We do have a website, www.hitgalutconsultants.com. info@hitgalutconsultants.com is our general email address, or you can write me an email at Elizabeth. The email address is elizabeth@hitgalutconsultants.com. Rodney's is also rodney@hitgalutconsultants.com. Google Hit Galut Consultants and it will come up on Twitter. Well, it's no longer called Twitter, it's X, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram as well. And on Google. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Rodney. A very intriguing and stimulating conversation today. This is Franklin Marshall with African Trade Network. Please hit like and share, and we will see you next week on African Trade Network. Thank you.